the fear of having to relinquish their children to go with this partner who's been abusive to them without their presence,
Mm-hmm.
that fear overwhelms everything.
Is it always better for kids if their parents stay together? This line of thinking might cause a person experiencing domestic violence to remain in that abusive relationship for the sake of the children. But is that always what's best for everyone involved? I'm MC Robinson, and this is Unsilenced, a JBWS podcast where we have real conversations about abuse. Today's mini episode was pulled from my conversation with JBWS's Crisis Response Team manager, Robin Hughes, and it delves deeper into this topic. If you're interested in listening to the entire podcast episode, the link is in the description. Something we didn't talk about was also the effect on people who have children and how maybe kids could also complicate it, because I think there is sometimes a prevailing narrative that, oh, you stay together for the kids. You don't leave to support your kids. But why isn't it always inherently better to stay for the kids? Even if the kids might not want you to get divorced or might want their parents to stay together, why isn't it always better to stay together for the kids?
Well, you know what? There's so many thoughts, trains of thought about that topic. I think if it's a cultural component, right? If
Right.
culturally a married family, a religious reason, a married family is better than a divorced family. All of those factors play in individually with people. There is no cookie cutter answer to that question, though, for sure. I think for many victims, the fear of having to relinquish their children to go with this partner who's been abusive to them without their presence,
Mm-hmm.
that fear overwhelms everything. And that's the way our system works, right? People, whether or not that person has been abusive to their partner, if there's no proof of abuse to the children, they are going to get those children on the weekends, or they're going to split custody. And then what that survivor was able to control while they stayed, now they're blind.
Yeah.
They can't see it. They can't control it. They can't be the go-between when that person's behavior starts to escalate. They're not there to buffer it for their children. So sometimes they feel, I'd rather be here, and because the thought of having my kids go with that person without me present is frightening and too much for me. Um, and that's a tough spot. That is
Yeah.
a really tough spot. But is someone who's living in a home that is abusive and those children witness that, are they affected? Absolutely, they are.
Mm.
They are affected. And that is a form of abuse to those children. Um, but what's the options here, right? The options are now letting visitation happen and you have no control over it,
Mm-hmm.
or just bringing in other entities and speak your truth about why your children aren't safe in that environment, and advocate to be heard so people can step in and make sure that those children are safe in that environment. If there's drugs or alcohol, like there's agencies out there that will support you in supporting your children and making sure that they're safe. But again, that's another system, and it's another thing that someone has to fight through. I mean, you're dealing with people who in the world have been taught they don't have a voice,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
In their relationship, they've never had a voice, but now they have to find their voice for their children and themselves
Mm-hmm.
within all of these systems, right? Which is why it's so important to be connected to agencies that can help walk them through it, to
Mm-hmm.
help them find their voice as
Mm-hmm.
they're moving forward. But for children, that is just, you're either going to have two children come out of that. You're going to have those that don't ever want to be in that type of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to find children who see that the person who was abusive got their needs met,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore will follow in the pattern of being a controller and being abusive because that's what got their needs met, right? And people want their needs met. That's the scenarios, and definitely children need to be able to connect to services and counseling to be able to process that. Their little brains are not developed. And for a parent, I see parents like this all the time. My child hates me. My child thinks I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm being mean to daddy. I'm being mean to mommy, right? For their own safety. And sadly, that has to play out as they grow and as they mature and they're able to process what happened and process it even as a child with counseling services, that is not the scenario they've made in their brain as is not the real one. And as they grow and they mature, you hope that they get a better a more objective view of that relationship as they become adults,
Yeah.
to know that. But for a parent going through it in the moment, that's not a consolation. That is very, very, very hard to do. It is
No.
not easy.
And I think a lot of parents, to your point, try and absorb almost all of the abuse. So they're like, oh, I'm shielding them or I'm trying to protect them. But there's obviously moments when the kids are going to be alone with their mother or father or parent, guardian, where you can't control exactly what's going on. And I think that's also a very important element, too. And all of this, once again, isn't to say that it's hopeless you should stay in this relationship.
No, no.
Yes, and I think that's, like, the point that we really need to drive home too, is that there is help. You're just talking about connecting to agencies that can guide you through it, because it's like taking a really complicated exam, and with an agency, you studied for the exam instead of going in
Right.
blind, I think that is important to just really be clear about.
Mhm.
And
They're not alone, right?
yes.
There's a
Mhm.
huge piece of isolation around people who are in unhealthy relationships. And there's so many other people because we know this is an epidemic, right?
Yeah.
There are so many other people who are out there experiencing the same thing that
Mhm.
they are. And sometimes to be around those other people, or like to say they did group counseling, or just, to be around other people to validate the
Yeah.
experience they're having,
Mhm.
gives them momentum to plan, right? It's not a line in the sand sometimes.
Mhm.
There has to be some kind of mythology, like let's think it through.
Yeah.
Let's listen to other people, hear what works for them, hear what didn't work for them, and then figure out a plan for yourself based on your own situation. But that is about education, right? That's about taking that time to learn and to really figure out what's going to work best and keep you the safest, right? Because we know that moving out of that relationship is the most dangerous time for somebody,
Mhm.
right? And having that support and being able to plan around that it's vital. It is very, very, very important that they do that. And that's why connecting to services at any time during your journey, if you think this is unhealthy, talk to somebody, call
Mhm.
the local agency in your county, talk to somebody to really talk it out. Because if it feels wrong, it probably is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? We've trained ourselves to not tap into how we feel about things.
Mhm.
Um, but your body is designed to give you warnings. It
Yeah.
tells the back of your hair stands up, there's something going on,
Mhm.
and to believe in yourself that if you feel that this is wrong, it probably is wrong. And to
Mhm.
have somebody help you to talk about it and navigate through it and to plan around it.
As Robin describes in this mini episode, it is impossible to apply one standard to every single person experiencing abuse. We cannot objectively say that it is always better to stay or always better to leave. That decision is up to the person that is experiencing abuse, because they are the experts in their own safety. If you need help, resources are in the description and at the end of this mini episode. If you aren't already, please subscribe to us. It really helps us to increase our conversations about abuse and spread awareness about our mission. Thank you for listening to Unsilenced this year. We are going to be taking a 2-week hiatus, and we will be back with new episodes in the beginning of January 2025. Thank you so much for listening. See you next year. Thank you for listening to this episode of Unsilenced, Real Conversations About Abuse. This podcast is produced by JBWS, a domestic violence agency serving Morris County, New Jersey. Please let us know what topics you would like covered on this podcast by sending an email to podcast@jbws.org. Please note that this email address is only intended for content relating to the podcast. It is not meant to offer immediate assistance or access to services. If you live or work in Morris County and think you might be in an unhealthy relationship, JBWS is here to help. Please visit our website at jbws.org to learn more about our services, or call our 24-hour helpline to speak to members of our staff at 1-877-782-2873. If you recognize controlling or abusive behaviors in yourself, JBWS can also help change those behaviors. Through our Jersey Center for Nonviolence, JBWS offers programs for men, women, and adolescent males who have used abusive or controlling behaviors in their relationships. Please visit jbws.org/JCNV or call 973-539-7801 to learn more. If you don't live in Morris County, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Domestic violence grows in silence, so thank you so much for listening and helping us break through that silence through these types of conversations. Please follow us on social media and continue to share our content to get as many people talking about domestic abuse as possible.